My guest today is Zac Townsend. Zac is the CEO and co-founder of Meanwhile, first life insurance and provider denominated and operating entirely in Bitcoin. We'll learn all about this today. Welcome to the show, Zac.
Great. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here, Zac. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show. It would be cool if you could please introduce yourself. Would love to hear some of your personal and professional backstory. What have you been doing in the lead up to co-founding Meanwhile?
Great. Yeah. So I grew up in New Jersey, very working class. My dad was a postman, tested into a good high school, led to a pretty good college. My first real job is I worked for this guy, Cory Booker, who at the time was the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. And I got really interested in financial inclusion, financial empowerment. I was the head of innovation for the city and was sort of asking questions like, why do people in West Newark, New Jersey not have bank accounts and do check cashing and stuff like that? And as someone who had just been really interested in technology, my take was the marginal cost of a bank account should be zero because it's just like database entries. So when Cory ran for Senate, I decided that I was going to go work on that. So I just applied to cold emailed and got a job at the coolest fintech company I thought existed at the time. It's 2013. And I ended up as employee 37 at Stripe. And then I moved out here to San Francisco, worked at Stripe for a little bit. Then I founded my own company. I went through Y Combinator. We built sort of even lower level infrastructure. So we built APIs that Stripe consumed, sort of wrapping around banks, and was backed by Andreessen and Index and Data Collective and a bunch of amazing people. And that's actually at the end of that, we were sort of we succeeded, but sort of not, it wasn't, an amazing success. And ultimately we sold that business to Silicon Valley Bank. But while we were selling that business, Coinbase offered to sort of buy us, which obviously would have been much more lucrative than selling to Silicon Valley Bank. But that's when I first got introduced to Bitcoin. So Brian sent me Bitcoin through Coinbase to get me to sign up for an account, and was sort of showing me how it worked. It was 2015. So sort of really was interested in Bitcoin, sort of believed in Bitcoin, started dollar cost averaging over time into Bitcoin. And I did a bunch of other things. I led a chunk of product to another fintech unicorn. I worked at McKinsey for a bit. And then my co-founder and I sat down in late 2022. We were sort of both ready to start something new again. I had sort of settled down with got married and had some kids, and that was a little further behind us. And so we really had this core thesis that there's going to be a Bitcoin economy, that there's going to be an economic system sort of built on Bitcoin as a currency. And then like any other economic system in the world that's developed, it's going to have regulated financial institutions. So it's going to have, this economy is going to have banks, and it's going to have payment systems, it's going to have asset managers, it's going to have exchanges. And we got really interested in the idea that there was going to be a life insurer, and I can tell you why that's really exciting and not really boring in a few minutes. But then we built it. So we've been at this for 3.5 years now.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think that's probably actually a good place to start, Zac. And you're right. It's like when people think life insurance, they don't necessarily associate that with Bitcoin, do they? But I guess, for a variety of reasons, perhaps they should, and perhaps they will ever more so as we move forward. But well, let's start from the top. So what was the big idea here? Why did you decide to start building Meanwhile, and how did you kind of make that connection that life insurance was the way to go?
Yeah, I mean, look, fundamentally, I think life insurance is the original HODL. It's the original saving for your kids, thinking about intergenerational wealth transfer. We started from that basic belief, which is that the greatest store of value, long-term store of value in the world is Bitcoin. And it's global, it's decentralized, it's inflation resistant, it's outside the control of any government, which means it can't casually be debased. And when you think about life insurance, and life insurance, actually, we're regulated and licensed, and our license in Bermuda, it's actually called long-term insurance. So it's not just life insurance, it's also like deferred annuities and savings products and like all this stuff. And fundamentally, we think there's no better long-term savings product than Bitcoin. And then what the company, all insurers do is basically two things. On the one hand, you provide this like critical, like hundreds of year old financial service, which answers these fundamental human questions like, what happens to my loved ones if I die before I'm supposed to? Like, that's life insurance. What happens to my loved ones if I live longer than I'm supposed to? Like, that's what an annuity is about. And then all the like tax and estate planning implications that come around these tools. And then the other hand, life insurers are, they're not exactly unique, but they play a privileged role in traditional economic systems, sort of endowments, sovereign wealth funds, insurance companies. They have incredibly long durations. They think in decades, just like they're sort of helping their customers save for decades. And we think that that's like super important. If we're going to build this economic system in this amazing global store of value, then it's not just going to be trading day to day. It's not just going to be like, what's the price today or tomorrow or next month or even next year? It's going to be like, what does this look like as an asset or the best collateral in the world for decades to come? So, we see the ultimate vision on that side of the business is there's going to be debt capital markets in Bitcoin, and there's going to be a yield curve in Bitcoin, and there's going to be borrowing and lending and productive economic activity in the world that's entirely denominated in Bitcoin. And we sort of started the company to work on both those problems, the problem of long-term hodling and savings and tax planning for customers, and then the like institutional side of building out a yield curve in Bitcoin.
Yep. And we should just say that at the beginning, is this just for people in the US? How does that work, Zac?
Yeah, so currently we operate, it's actually just a restriction about our ability to underwrite you and sort of do like KYC and anti-money laundering stuff. So right now we have customers who have come to us offshore in Bermuda from the US and Canada and the UK. And then we have thousands of people on a wait list, and we're like building out the infrastructure. We are a life insurance company, so we have to like know whether you're healthy and whether you are who you say you are. So we're like slowly, hope to eventually get to probably the Commonwealth countries will be next, and then all over the world.
Got it. All right. Well, look, I know you guys do a few different things, but maybe just for the benefit of people, just help people understand, how it works and what the benefits would look like sort of over, a long period of time, because that's kind of the idea. Yeah. But just walk us through like a typical, I don't know if you call it a customer journey, but what the kind of typical customer, who the different customer target buckets are, if you like, and kind of what their needs are and what you kind of do for them and what that looks like, Zac.
Yeah, so we have two personas. Demographically, they're somewhat similar. They're like 35 to 55-year-old men who hold some Bitcoin. We find that it's easiest to distinguish them between sort of like from where did their Bitcoin come from, right? So if you're like been in Bitcoin a long time, you're like an OG Bitcoiner or crypto person, like that's one persona. And then the other persona, I think, is probably like someone who's coming to Bitcoin more recently. It might be a family office. They might be an entrepreneur who's now buying some Bitcoin. And then the value prop around our core product, which is called Whole Life, because it lasts your whole life. And because you will eventually die, then there will eventually be a payout. So it is very much like a HODL, a savings product. And then what the policyholder is getting is really four things. So one is there's protection, right? The way the policy works is you might pay us 10 Bitcoin. I'm using big numbers to make them round. You might pay us 10 Bitcoin, and we promise when you die, we'll pay your beneficiaries 15, say. So the first thing is that, like, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, you're your loved ones get 15 Bitcoin. So there's that like protection element of it. And like on some level, we just ask people, would you prefer that your kids got $1 million or $1.5 million or 15 Bitcoin? And by the way, there are a lot of people in the world that would say absolutely $1.5 million. Those aren't our customers. But if your answer is absolutely 15 Bitcoin, then you're probably a customer for us. So you get the protection. The second thing is in most jurisdictions, that 10 to 15, that compounding is tax-free. So normally if you were compounding Bitcoin or getting yield on anything, you owe interest income or short-term capital gains tax, something like that during the year. But the compoundings happen tax-free, so we can like get further than you could over your lifetime. The third thing, sort of value prop, is that you can borrow out of the policy. So there's sort of a savings account like thing accumulating over time in the policy. You can borrow Bitcoin against that. In most jurisdictions, again, I'm not going to get tax advice in every jurisdiction, but in many jurisdictions, it's tax-free to do that borrowing. So it's like you're getting new tax basis Bitcoin. And then it's a loan where there's no margining, there's no like getting blown out of your position. Fundamentally, you just die eventually, and then it's like netted out against the amount that goes to your kids. So we have a lot of users who might have a ton of Bitcoin. They're holding that in various ways. Maybe some's in multi-sig, some's in a ledger, and they put some in us. And the reason that is because if they ever did need liquidity, this would be like a tax advantage way to have that liquidity. And then the fourth thing is, we're just under a legal regulatory obligation to sort of make sure that your kids or your wife or your loved ones get your Bitcoin. There's a bunch of tragic stories about people who like lose their keys, or they don't know how to, the wife doesn't know how to get the husband's Bitcoin. And like we sort of make, give people peace of mind. So to relate that back to our personas, I think for persona 1, that's sort of like native to crypto, native to Bitcoin, it's sort of obvious to them, right? Like they've had a lot of success with Bitcoin. They like, a lot of them are sort of growing up, I hope that's not like pejorative, but just like, they were buying Bitcoin in 2013 to like buy shrooms on Milk Road, or Silk Road, sorry. And then now they're getting older, they're getting married, they're having kids, they're like literally thinking about trusts and estates and tax planning. And then we come along and we're like, this is a native product to Bitcoin that's like in this world. And then for the second persona, it's much more like they've probably been pitched life insurance as a protection tax planning tool. And they've decided recently to buy 10 Bitcoin or 20 Bitcoin or 30 Bitcoin. And then like we're a good vehicle to hold that Bitcoin for the long term.
Yep. Yeah, makes perfect sense. You mentioned, of course, there are tax advantages, right? And of course, it's a bit hard to understand because I'm sure it's a little bit different, all around the world and so on. But just, explain what the tax advantages are of owning, I guess, Bitcoin life insurance.
Yeah, look, generally, societies find it bad for there to be starving widows and orphans. So there have for a long time have been incentives to buy life insurance or to save for your retirement through annuities. And those tax benefits and tax privileges, then like every other tax benefit or tax privileges, like get used for bigger policies or more complex policies or more complex estates. So fundamentally, the tax benefits tend to be that it goes to your beneficiaries tax-free, that the internal sort of returns on the policy are tax-free, that you can borrow against it tax-free, and then like beyond that, things like can get complicated. Like what's the actual, like in the US, we structure the policy so you pay over 10 years, and that's to comply with a bunch of tax rules to make all the other things I said be true. In other jurisdictions, you can pay up front. So it tends to be more of just like some ways you have to design the policies that changes whether you get the tax privileges. But in general, those privileges of like tax-free to your kids, tax-free compounding, tax-free borrowing tend to be universally true.
Yeah, makes sense. And I'm curious, what do life insurance traditionally? It's a fairly, I don't know, buttoned down industry.
Yeah.
I think you know what I mean. People know what I mean. I'd be fascinated to sort of see, I don't know I don't know if colleagues is the right word, but or competitors, I guess, even. What is the rest of the industry, if they're even aware of you? What do they think of what you're doing?
Well, it's obviously changed over time, right? So we started in early 2022. So there was some interest, and then FTX happened, and there was no interest. And now, like here in 2025, we're in a very like institutional year for Bitcoin again. So there's a lot of interest in sort of what we're doing. I think it's interesting because the way we operate the company is the entire company is denominated in Bitcoin. So we take premiums in Bitcoin and pay claims in Bitcoin. We do the actuarial math, the regulatory filings, the solvency calculations, the audited financials, all entirely in Bitcoin. And I think what often happens is when people realize how we're doing it, intellectually, they're like, oh, that's the right way to do it. Like if you were going to start a Bitcoin life insurance company, you've like created the safe Bitcoin life insurance company, right? So there's a lot of respect for that. But then, I think the other half of the same people often are like, but the whole thing is just sort of crazy. So what I like to say is like, we have some serious insurance people on the team. I don't have to have every actuary in the world think this is genius. I just have to have one really good actuary like think it's genius. Having said that, this year we're seeing a lot more interest in potentially partnerships or us supporting companies in bringing products like ours to market. I think there'll be a long-term strategic decision for the company about how much of our efforts is direct sales ourselves, which we've had a lot of success with and we're very proud of, or is it that we are partnering with existing carriers to like have them bring Bitcoin products to market, like our I don't know what an example is. Coinbase both is a direct-to-consumer retail thing, but then like just today they announced that they're going to empower PNC to do their Bitcoin or crypto custody business. So I think those sorts of choices are now open to us too, and I think that be great for our business.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And I see that you've got backing by a number of interesting people, but there's one name that stands out. Sam Altman is, I guess an investor is a backer. So
how did that come to be?
how did that come to be?
Yeah. Look, I went through Y Combinator, as I mentioned, in 2013. It was, of course, Paul Graham was still running YC at the time, but Sam was a part-time partner. Sure knew him through there. And it's funny when you asked the previous question about our colleagues or competitors. Fundamentally, we think that this is a potential defining financial product to expand the universe of people who could access insurance products. What does that mean? It means that people in Argentina don't buy life insurance because they are going to live longer than the Argentinian peso. Right? So like in a world with political risk and currency risk and inflation risk and jurisdictional risk, actually having a global universal store of value changes the nature of like who can be a customer. How does that relate back to Sam? Sam just loves really big ideas. So my pitch for Sam is like, we're going to build the world's largest life insurance company. We're going to do that reaching people through the medium of Bitcoin, and then we're going to serve them profitably through automation and AI. And those sorts of audacious goals, like whether it's building nuclear reactors, it's building an insurance company, or whatever it is, like those are the types of things that I think motivate Sam as an investor. And I think that's why he led our co-led our seed round, and we're happy to have him on board, as well as like an amazing set of like our Series A, $40 million Series A was co-led by Folger, who's just like a great name in Bitcoin, and Framework, who like I consider to be some of like the smartest guys working on crypto and DeFi. So we put together a great list, and we're happy to have all of them on board and building the world's largest life insurer.
Yeah, no, some heavy hitters there. The framework guys, very very smart DeFi guys. Yeah, and not to kind of dwell on Sam, but do you think Sam is kind of a closet Bitcoiner in some ways? Or I know he does WorldCoin and well, he does a million different things, I guess. But yeah,
If by a Bitcoiner you mean he's like Maxi, my honest answer is I don't think he thinks about it much. Like I think he
it's got enough
very
to think
much.
about.
He definitely he's all about AI, right? And I think how that's going to change the world. And I think it's going to change. It changes how we're running our business, and I think it'll change the scope and scale of what we're doing. But obviously, I think his ambition is, a level above that all industries should be radically changed. So I don't think he's spent a lot of time deciding,
No. All right. Well, but Bitcoin itself, though, as you pointed out at the beginning of the show, it's kind of, the year when the institutions are kind of finally here, and suddenly we are building out this Bitcoin economy, and something like Meanwhile just has the potential, as you've explained, to be quite a big part of that. And there's just a number of different teams, companies, startups doing kind of interesting, similar things that people aren't even really super aware of. Then there's the the ETFs and the big corporations doing big things. You've got all these treasury companies. What do you sort of make of all of this, Zac? Where are we in terms of this kind of Bitcoin cycle, this build out of the Bitcoin economy? What's going well? Anything that keeps you up at night? Big questions, but what are we thinking?
Big questions. Well, I think you're absolutely right that I'm, as I said in the beginning, I think this is going to be an economic system, and I think there's been fits and starts, and we're probably somewhere in a cycle. I joke with people that I raised a Series A big enough so I could definitely survive for 4 years to sort of get through whatever might come. But I do think that you touched a lot of it. One is that there are builders, and those builders, whether they're working in insurance or payments or banking or borrowing against Bitcoin or asset management or whatever it is, I think that there are people who have come back to Bitcoin to build in it. And I might not agree or have an opinion on every single particular flavor of that. But I think that that's really important, and that that is sort of where a lot of the long-term, I think, energy and capacity and capabilities of the economy will come from. And then, at the same time, you see all these big companies getting in. I think that they're a little less ideological. I think they're going to lead to a lot of adoption. But for me, fundamentally, I think I draw a distinction between people who think Bitcoin is just an asset, is just gold in the ground, versus I think those of us who think that Bitcoin is money, and money is movement, it's activity, it's productive uses. And I don't think Fidelity is thinking on that second level. I think they're thinking on the first level. And then as for treasury companies, look, I think it's an amazing arb. I don't know, should have launched a Bitcoin treasury company myself, I guess. But I think what you'll see over time is that the financial engineering of the MNAV multiple will go down. And, whether you think that's an arbitrage closing or whatever. And then what are those companies going to be? My analogy is they're going to be endowments. They're going to be these giant permanent capital vehicles that have 5,000 Bitcoin or 30,000 Bitcoin or whatever, and that they're going to have to then move to doing something else than just the financial engineering gimmicks that are what they do now. And they're going to have to go into what I was just talking about, which is the productive side of the economy. They're going to have to think about how to get yield, or how to buy productive businesses, or create the economic system that I think is possible. And I think the people who do that well are going to survive and have an MNAV multiple, because they are going to have cash flows in Bitcoin and future compounding and accretion in Bitcoin. And those who don't may well trade below their MNAV multiple, and they're going to get bought by the first category. So I think right now we're in this, can be an explosion of Bitcoin treasury companies. And I think eventually that'll suss out to there being consolidation and these big, giant pools of capital. And those pools of capital are going to seek productivity.
Yep, very well said. All right, look, as we finish up this part of the podcast, then, Zac, for anyone listening who's thinking, well, I've got some Bitcoin and maybe, I need to update
and
my
I
life
don't
insurance.
like taxes. I've got Bitcoin. I don't like taxes. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you got Bitcoin, you don't like taxes, you want life insurance, what should people do? Where should they go, Zac?
Yeah, so they should go to meanwhile.bm. That's our website. You can sign up there. It's a little intimidating. It's a big form, but every single person who signs up, we send an email from me or one of my colleagues, and we offer to jump on the phone or jump on a Zoom and have a call. We take the trust that our policyholders have in us very seriously. We know it's a big decision. You should not send your Bitcoin around lightly. And so we get on the phone with every single person. We talk through their specific situation. There's actually a lot of complexity here, like, are you buying the policy? Is your wife buying the policy? Is trust your kids have buying a policy? There's a lot of little nuances about ownership and who's insured and beneficiaries, and we work that all out. We answer tons of questions about our risk management and credit management procedures and processes, and then you walk through what looks like a relatively standard underwriting process of answering some questions about your health and your identity, and then ultimately, assuming you're healthy and are who you say you are, you end up with the proud owner, the proud policyholder, and that all starts again with going to meanwhile.bm.
I love it. And that link is in the show notes, listeners. Zac, it is time to finish off the show, and we do that by running you through the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
Sure. I have no idea what it means, but I'm looking forward.
Don't worry. It's just a bit of fun, Zac. I'm just going to run some questions at you, and I just want you to give me your honest answers, kind of hot take style, if you like. But yeah.
Right.
Question one for you is, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
If 10 is maxi and 1 is multi-chain, I'm probably like a 7 or an 8.
All right, very well said. What would you say then, Zac, is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
Bitcoin will be here in 100 years.
Yeah. Nice. Look, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So 10 years is a long time, especially in crypto and tech and AI. But look, anything you like here, kind of the Bitcoin economy. Meanwhile, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
I think meanwhile is going to be huge. My head of insurance said 2.5 years ago or something like, if we exist in 5 years, we'll exist in 50. And I think we're well on our way. I think the big thing I'll say about the Bitcoin economy is I think that there will be a lot of things in the global economy that are denominated in Bitcoin in 10 years. And I mean that oil futures, energy contracts. I think these things are all naturally going to tend toward a global store of value that's not American or Chinese. And I think that is going to be Bitcoin. And I think that'll be a profound shift in the global economy, driven by this new global store of value. I don't think it'll be there in 2, but we'll be there in 10.
I love it. William Gibson said, of course, that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, can you think of an example of, the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
Well, yeah, my obvious answer is like still Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
So few people own it. I don't think I have what I would consider a non-consensus answer. Like, I think it's Bitcoin. I think, I use ChatGPT not to like finish work, but to do work like every day, probably all the time. And I think people underestimate how profoundly it can affect your productivity, or many people do.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. And it brings us really to the final question, Zac, which is, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
I'm going to go with, classic. I sort of grew up on Star Trek Next Generation. I think there's optimism. There's a lot of intelligent stories. It's probably one of the few. It's the only show I can imagine from so long ago that every once in a while, I think of something and I'm like, I have to go watch that, season 7 episode. So I think that's definitely my probably underneath it all, some part of my optimistic, long-term, futuristic, techno-utopian vision.
Couldn't have said it better. Couldn't agree more. All right. Look, thank you so much, Zac. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for spending some time with us today. Just to close out the episode again, tell people where they can go to investigate.
That's meanwhile.pm. And again, we jump on a call with everyone, answer every question we can. And I'm Z Townsend on X, and I also answer my DMs there.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Andy.
Yep. Thank you, Zac. All the best, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.